Hey everyone, it's Jen.
And this is Lindsay.
And this is Corpus Delicti, the podcast. Welcome back to our Missing Person series.
We are going to kick this week off with, obviously, another missing person story. If you haven't yet, if you are interested, if you're a visual person, just a reminder that we do have our YouTube channel now. And all of the episodes in this series so far are up there. Some of them have pictures of the actual people involved. Some of them are just visuals. But if you're a visual person, that is there.
And know that we will probably not be up to date a lot of the times, but they do make their way to YouTube. Thank you, Jen, for, slacking on that area.
No, you've been doing great. It's all there and it's awesome. It's just another, way to consume content if you prefer that. So sometimes it is a day or two behind the regular episode or longer if something else comes up, but it is always shortly behind.
And check out Lindsay on TikTok. She does all of our TikToks for Corpus Delicti, and they reinforce all the case information. So,
and it's not every case on TikTok, but it is a lot of them. I try to get, what I can. So anyway, just throwing that out there. But without further ado, we will go ahead and get started on this week's story. So this story begins on December 26, 1991, when Bianca Noel Piper was born to Shannon Tanner and David Piper. She was their youngest daughter, so Bianca had two sisters, Tiffany and Amber, with Tiffany being the oldest. But in 1993, Shannon and David divorced. Shannon then started a new relationship, and together, she and her new boyfriend moved with the three girls to Foley, Missouri in 2004.
Bianca loved horses and she loved Barbies. She did have her share of struggles. She was a very good artist and she was talented, but she struggled with mental health very early on. The teachers at Winfield Middle School, where she attended, said that she had a mental capacity of about a second grader when she was in middle school, and she missed school a lot. As a result, she did attend special education classes. She did have ADHD and severe bipolar disorder. With this bipolar disorder, she had been in and out of the hospital for it. It gave her severe mood swings, anxiety attacks, and aggressive tendencies, and a lack of self-control. Luckily, she was medicated for this, and the medications worked very well for her when she was on them. But for many of you who have 13, 12-year-old children, you know sometimes it can be a struggle. But if she wasn't on her medications, things got bad. She would get disoriented and have hallucinations. Shannon said Bianca had been in counseling since she was around 4 years old.
Thursday, March 10th, 2005, Bianca is now 13 years old, and on this day, she is having a particularly bad day. Her mother told her to do the dishes. Things got heated. Bianca got upset, and then she got very, very angry. And she asked her mother for some time to cool off. She had a new way of doing this that was recommended to her by her therapist. And this suggestion was that Bianca take a walk, go outside to clear her head when she gets in these episodes. And the night before was the first time they had done this, and it seemed to work well. She took the walk, she came back, she was a little more clear-headed, but this time she asked her mother to drop her off a little further away than the night before. There was an article in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch that said that Shannon said the night before, when Shannon came home from work, Bianca had a bag packed and said she felt like she was losing control and needed to go to the hospital. And as Jen said, Bianca had been hospitalized before. Shannon said, hey, try doing this walk. The therapist suggested it. So she did. Bianca came back. She felt better and the evening was great. So now this next night, Bianca grabbed a flashlight. Shannon takes Bianca to the bridge off of McIntosh Hill Road at 6:15 p.m., and this is about a mile from their house. So Shannon drives back home, is going to let Bianca walk home, have her cool down moment, and Shannon starts cooking dinner.
Now she's cooking dinner and it's been about 15 minutes. Shannon's starting to wonder where Bianca is. It's starting to take a while and she waited just a few more minutes. It was only a mile. Normally walking a slow mile is usually about 16, maybe 17 minutes. A brisk one could be about 13. But Bianca's heated. We don't know how fast she was actually walking. But Bianca should be home by now. Shannon jumps in her car and drives through where Bianca would have been walking to and from. But Bianca wasn't there. Maybe she veered off and took another route, or, could she have just popped off and, maybe nature called, she had to use the restroom? Not quite sure. Shannon and Jim started going door to door in the area, but unfortunately, no one had seen Bianca and they had no clue where she was. Now, there's still no trace of her for 2 hours. The police are called at 8:20 and Bianca is reported missing.
In another St. Louis Post-Dispatch article, Shannon said that when she dropped Bianca off, there were no harsh words. Bianca never said she was going to run away, nothing like that. She was, she knew her daughter's moods and what to expect, and it was nothing alarming. She says that the night before, Bianca said, I feel like I'm losing control and I need to go to the hospital. There was nothing like that this night. She was doing better, and it just seemed to be the incident with the dishes that upset her. So there is now a sense of urgency here because it's March. It is getting below freezing this night. It's actually snowing. And there's a concern that Bianca would freeze if she was exposed to the elements for too long, like if she had gotten lost or, heaven forbid, if someone had taken her. Also, as we know, she needed her medication or she would have gotten disoriented. So they're like, we've got to find this girl fast, no matter what happened. And of course, they're not necessarily jumping to worst case scenario right away. So a search was started using search dogs, four-wheelers, helicopters, and horses. It covered 270 square miles, and there were 100 people that came out searching on foot.
The next day is Friday. The police set up various checkpoints along the road and the surrounding areas. Each morning, the team would meet up at the high school and expand the search area bit by bit, and now it's including nearby caves. This lasted a week, and still there's no sign of Bianca. This is when police ditched the theory of her just getting lost, and she's likely now abducted. Thousands and thousands of flyers are passed out and hung wherever they can fit, where they can staple, where they can be taped. Now they started the investigation, and as we know, they start with the closest, Shannon and Jim.
So Shannon and Jim did both take polygraphs and they passed. Of course, we know that's not worth much one way or another, and they're not admissible in court. So take that with a grain of salt either way. David, which was Shannon's first husband and Bianca's father, was also cleared. And they learned that Bianca had no history of running away before. So they're trying to completely rule that out for sure. And soon the case was on America's Most Wanted and Without a Trace. And this did lead to an influx of tips that came from all across. And they were thankful for that. But unfortunately, nothing panned out. Police did believe that if Bianca was abducted, which is looking more and more likely at this point, that the perpetrator would have had to have been from around the area because that road where she was dropped off, which was a mile from their house, it was off of this dirt gravel road and it was off the beaten path. It was not, on some major highway or whatever that you're going to have to pass through. So they also felt that abduction was the most reasonable explanation. Now, later in March, the Carroll-Sund Carrington Memorial Reward Foundation offered a $5,000 reward for information leading to Bianca's return, and the family added an additional $5,000, making the total offered $10,000.
Now it's been 2 months. There is still no sign of Bianca. Then there are a series of incidents that occurred that led some people to speculate on a theory. In May, just 2 months after the disappearance, police responded to a domestic dispute between Shannon and Jim, where Shannon filed a complaint against Jim. Remember, the two are together, but they're not yet married. Apparently, though, the two worked it out and Shannon dropped the complaint. In June, Shannon is arrested and charged with assault. Allegedly, Shannon had an altercation with Tiffany, her 18-year-old daughter, Bianca's sister. She allegedly hit Tiffany on the head with a curling iron and threatened to tie her up and lock her in the room. Now, when detectives arrive at the home, they found Shannon on top of her daughter, holding her face to the ground, and noticed a large bump on Tiffany's forehead. Shannon says that she was trying to keep Tiffany from hurting herself. She said that Tiffany had thrown a glass dish at her. She also said that Tiffany had not been taking her medication for schizophrenia and bipolar. But at this point, it's a he said, she said. We have a huge stressor here. Bianca's missing. Bianca has bipolar. We're finding out now Tiffany has schizophrenia and bipolar. So we're talking a family full of stress, and they're at the breaking point. But it kind of gets worse here. Shannon shoves the officer and reaches for a piece of broken glass on the ground. In response, the second officer actually had to tase Shannon. She is quickly arrested. After this, their other daughter is sent to live with her grandmother.
So it's not hard to see what theory ended up spawning from this set of incidents. And this goes without saying, but we were not there. We do not know what really happened. But people started talking about the quote unquote dysfunction in the family potentially being a cause, and that Shannon could have done something to Bianca and used the walking story as a cover, because they're saying now, look, she has been in some sort of altercation with her other daughter. Now, we don't know in what way that transpired. We don't know if Tiffany was off of her medication and threw something at her mother retaliated or self-defense, or if it was vice versa. We just don't know. But whatever it was, no charges came from it in relation to Bianca. And police said they don't consider it to be related to Bianca's disappearance. Shannon said after this, I don't want people to stop caring because they think the family is messed up or that I might have something to do with it. There's a little girl missing and we need to find her. She also says, of course, she deeply regrets her decision to drop Bianca off and let her walk. So on the second anniversary of the case, friends and family planted a tree and dedicated a bench to Bianca at the middle school.
At one point, the family sought out psychics. One said that she was picked up by a sex offender in a van, and another one said, look, she's just simply not alive. And the case grows cold. Now we're going to get to where the case picks up when we get right back from the break. Welcome back from the break. We're going to fast forward just a little bit in the story. It's 2007, and the family starts circulating an aged, progressed photo of Bianca. Her mother also stated that if she had been off of her medication for this long, it's quite possible that she has lost a bit of weight. Neighbors tied purple ribbons to trees to raise awareness. Shannon also is helping out the U.S. Postal Service. What she did was made upgrades to the direct mail postcards the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children used to get the word out about cases.
Also at this time, authorities started looking into other missing teens cases after 2 teenagers who had been abducted were found. 15-year-old Sean Hornbeck had gone missing in 2002, and 13-year-old Ben Ownby had been kidnapped 5 days before in 2007, so 5 days before he was found. Both were found in January 2007, both alive. They were in the home of Michael J. Devlin, who was the manager of a pizzeria. It was confirmed that they were indeed taken and held against their will. So it's not like they ran away and chose to live with this guy or anything like that. They were taken. It was forceful. And Devlin pleaded guilty and was sentenced to life. So once they found Sean and Ben, authorities got to thinking, maybe there's more. Maybe some of these missing teens that we're seeing over the past several years, maybe this is what happened. So they created a task force focused on this theory, but they were not able to find any evidence linking Michael Devlin to any of the other missing people, and the force was shut down.
Then in 2009, authorities get a new tip from a neighbor of the family. The neighbor said that they saw a white pickup truck near a pond on another neighbor's property on the night Bianca was last seen. A car or a truck on its own is not that strange, but it is what this neighbor heard in 2009 that made them call the police about it. This neighbor had talked to Tiffany, and Tiffany said, "My sister's in the pond." So she made that comment, "My sister is in the pond." Naturally, the police looked into this, but again, there's nothing that they could find. Also, in 2009, David passes away, not ever knowing what happened to his daughter. And in 2010, they also looked into Paul S. Smith. Now, he is a convicted sex offender, and he had been convicted of sodomy of a 10-year-old boy, and he is wanted for the kidnapping of a 4-year-old. So, food for thought here. If she is abducted, let's just say Bianca is abducted. She is now unable to take her medication. She's hallucinating. She has violent tendencies. The odds of this kidnapper knowing this of Bianca is very, very small, unless they know her.
But with Paul S. Smith, when they were looking into him for the kidnapping of Alisa Maier, when police go to confront him, they're going to go get the girl, he shot himself. He had only been out of jail for 2 weeks before he kidnapped sweet little Alisa, and he was also living with another sex offender. Now, luckily, Alisa was alive and unharmed, but there's no link to any of this and Bianca and her story. So at one point, police did find a girl that they thought might be Bianca. She was actually seen wandering a parking lot. Someone called in and said, "Hey, this looks like the missing girl Bianca. Also, she seems a little bit out of it." So they're like, maybe it's her because she's not on her medication. They actually called in the family to go meet with this girl. It was not her. I cannot even remotely imagine getting your hopes up, because that sounds promising. You're probably somewhat guarded, but you're also like, oh, please let that be her. And then just it getting crushed. You just have to experience that loss all over again, I would think. And it just tears you up.
In 2015, electronic billboards lit up along I-70 in St. Charles County, Missouri, to bring awareness to the case. It had now been 10 years, and this is actually donated by an outdoor advertising company, which is an amazing act of charity that they would do this to promote finding, missing children. At one point, it's theorized Bianca's disappearance is related to the murder of Angela Marie Hausman. This happened on November 18, 1993. The young girl went missing on her way home from school after getting off the bus. She was found 9 days later by a hunter. She was tied to a tree in the Bush Wildlife Conservation Area. An autopsy later revealed she had been kept alive for a week. Unfortunately, she had been raped and tortured. And again, no solid evidence having this being tied to Bianca. But let's just say this for this county. What the hell?
I know. What is going on? Yeah, and that's why they had that task force, because there was so much going on that they were trying to tie together. But yeah, this is a rough stretch of time. Now, granted, it's condensed into shorter time frame with us talking about it, and really at this point it has spanned 10 years, but still. But in March of 2019, DNA found on Angela, was able to be tested, and it matched 61-year-old Earl Webster Cox. He was a convicted sex offender who, at the time, lived just blocks from Angela's school. He was arrested and pled guilty and is currently serving a life sentence. They bring this up because they do have Bianca's DNA and dentals on file. So if they ever find someone that they think is her, they can test it. And if there is any DNA on the body, they can tie it back to this because they have his DNA on file as well. They couldn't find a link, but what they're saying is they still want to have officially rule that out. And basically, this brings us up to date. They still get about a dozen or so leads a year, but nothing that has been substantial. Last year, in 2021, a cold case unit was established to look into Bianca's case as well as others. So hopefully something will come from it.
So let's get into theories here, because there's a good number of theories out there about what could have happened to Bianca. The first one is from the investigators. They think it's most likely that Bianca was abducted while walking back to her house. I get where they're coming from because they did such an extensive search. They had helicopters, they had dogs, they had four-wheelers, they had horses. But this is a remote road. It's a gravel road. It just happened to align perfectly for a 5 to 10 minute span that she would be abducted.
And it's interesting that you say that. I didn't think about that because they think that the person was local, and that's because of where it was located and because it was in that remote area. But you do bring up a good point. Was it an area that anyone would have frequented? And I don't know that. Was there a hunting ground there where, you know what I'm saying, where people would have still populated, even if it was someone local? I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that the houses along this 1 mile stretch were far apart. They weren't close together neighborhood, right up against each other type houses. So you do bring up a good point that it would have had to line up perfectly. Now, that could mean that somebody was out there, waiting for someone. They were up to no good and they were stalking the area. I don't know. Was it a popular hangout spot for that kind of thing? We just don't know.
See, that was my next question. We know geographically it's remote, but is it highly trafficked? You do have those remote small town areas, but it's the only dirt road to cut through, instead of taking the interstate. So, yeah. There is a second theory. Some people think she had gotten lost and was exposed to the elements and died. She wasn't that far from home. We're looking at a remote area, but the amount of searching that happened with the dogs and the horses and the four-wheelers, and the fact that she hasn't been found yet in 10 years.
I agree with what you're saying. Where the heck is she then? Because it has been a long time and she could have only gone so far. She was gone between 15 and 20 minutes. There is only so far she could have gone on her own if she had gotten lost. And they searched, as far as we can tell, like you said, extensively out far past that.
Total possibility that you have all of these volunteers that could have missed her, but there have been searches and researches and people just going out walking. I don't know when she took her last medication. So did she become disoriented on the walk, or was she fully within her cognition at that time?
Good question. So the third theory, and we won't delve on this one too much because we've already talked about it a little bit, is her mom, which we've already discussed. A lot of people were like, okay, something doesn't add up with her story. There was a lot of talk about that not being good advice from a therapist, and a lot of people didn't buy it. But to be clear, the police have cleared the family. They are not considered suspects as far as we know. I do wonder if they checked with the therapist, or even if they could divulge that information. I don't know the laws around that, but I wonder if they asked the therapist, is is that something you told them? But, you know, Shannon has been very open about the case, very active in the case. That's not to say, I mean, we have seen people who have been behind the whole thing and they're still out there trying to divert attention away from themselves. But just to be perfectly clear, the police have said we do not think that the family is related.
I can see where people want to jump to this, but we didn't see the explosive behavior until we saw the stress and the triggers of a daughter missing rippled down a family. And that's where these acts of aggression came out. So,
And we don't know the full story behind
we
those.
don't.
We don't know what happened first. And we saw this in Basil and Jamal's story with the father. And there were some things that looked a little iffy there. There was the diaper and all that. And and the duct tape. And police were like, oh, we need to look into this. And it sounds a little bad at first, but then they were like, nope, not him. And it's that important lesson again of,
Don't jump to
you
conclusions.
you have to be careful with that.
There is another theory. She was near a bridge. There is a lot of emotion, a lot of strong emotion, and a lot of big emotion that she was feeling. If she had not taken her medication, like we don't know of her medication schedule, could she have gotten disoriented, turned around, and there was a bridge? Did she fall into the water? Where she's disoriented, she gets turned around, it's dark, she has a flashlight. Could she have tripped and tumbled down into the water?
And, she had mentioned to Shannon that night before feeling like she was losing control. And it sounds like she was able to cool down from that. But we don't know the full extent of, again, like you said, was she on her medication? Was there something else going on? So could that have happened? Now, it sounds like the police probably searched that area under the bridge because there was a creek. But what I don't know is how strong is that water if she fell in? Was it deep enough where she would have needed to swim? Was it shallow? Is there a current? Just don't know. I think probably they searched the area enough. If it's a creek, not like a river or whatever, but it is of note because she was dropped off near the bridge. Now, another theory is later on, years later, Tiffany ended up being arrested for sex work. She basically, the story goes, is she had been recruited into it, and now she was basically the one doing the recruiting. Some think that this could somehow be connected. So, in other words, someone tried to recruit Bianca, something went awry, and they recruited Tiffany. It is a roundabout way that some people have proposed that it's sex trafficking is what they're trying to get at. But I think it's important here that all of these are just theories. Like we said, nothing has been proven. The reason we talk about theories is because maybe someone remembers something. For example, this neighbor who ended up calling years later because they heard Tiffany say something. You never know what is going to trigger a memory or something in someone where they might know something. So we are not saying that any of these are true or not true. That's not our job. But it does serve to say, oh, did I see something? Does that make sense with what I saw? You just never know what is going to be that link for someone.
That's all the theories that are out there, whether it's on YouTube, the newspapers, Reddit. People look back at these disappearances years and years later, and when they're trying to piece together the puzzle pieces, sometimes it sounds really plausible, but when you're in the moment and you're in the middle of the investigation as a detective, as a police officer, it doesn't make sense to you or to them in the situation. They're looking at the ground, they're looking at the geography, they know the area, and they're talking to the people, they're looking at the house, they're looking at surrounding areas. They're looking for foul play. So it's easy for us to sit back and say, oh, the mom or the bridge or sex offender. Until it's proven, we have no idea. But just to kind of go over Bianca one more time, at the time of her disappearance, she is just 13 years old. She is last seen wearing a lime green blouse, gray Adidas hooded sweatshirt, blue jeans, and white sneakers. She was not out there to stay in the freezing cold weather. This is a brisk walk. It's 1 mile, maximum 15-20 minutes at the most. It's snowing. She was also carrying a flashlight. She was 5'6". She weighed 185 pounds. She's Caucasian and she has brown curly hair. She typically wears her hair in a ponytail. She's got brown eyes. Her ears are pierced and she has scars on her arms, legs, and one on her abdomen. She's often called B as just like a cute little nickname, and she may be in need of medical attention. If she is still out there, she does probably still have her mental health issues or challenges because she doesn't have her regular medication. So the case has been classified as an endangered missing child. And if she's alive now, she should be about 30 years old.
So, if you should happen to have information regarding the case, you would contact the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office at 636-528-8546 or 636-528-6100. You can also call tips into the St. Louis office of the FBI at 314-589-2500.
And we'll also put this on the YouTube slide or the show notes just to give you a quick access. If you happen to know anything, if you did hear of something or you happen to see someone who may look like her, call it in.
You just never know.
People are, knock on wood, go missing for years and turn up.
Well, there was one in this case. They found the two little boys and, one of them had been missing for years. So, and that's this whole series. I think that's what it's about is hope. Is there a hope? You just never know.
We want to give a huge thank you and shout out to our newest Patreon.
Woohoo! And her name is Jennifer. Did you sign up?
I didn't. It's not me. I have plenty of stickers and pins and buttons. She's going to get a big old package.
Yes, she is. And we appreciate you, Jennifer. We are super happy to have you as part of the Delectable team. If you too would like to join Patreon, it's patreon.com/Corpus Delicti. That gets you ad-free episodes every week, early access to episodes when possible, which has been more lately than usual. You get stickers, buttons, $3 and up. You get access to our Discord server where you can talk to us all the time. It's just lots of fun. So
it is. The Discord server, I just giggle at it. There's some really great conversations going, and there's a few that we get passionate about, especially that if y'all haven't seen the news, it's on CNN. It's kind of buried now because it's been a day or two, and it'll probably be a week until y'all hear this. But there was this nurse, a neonatal nurse in the UK that she just said, look, I'm evil. She hurt a lot of families. Look it up. We won't go in detail here because it's
terrible.
Terrible.
Yeah. And she was just like, I'm not good.
Yeah, she just like, thanks for catching me. We do. We have a lot of fun on there. Have a lot of great conversations. We have different folders or different chat groups that specific to true crime, specific to friends, families, pets. So if you want to get more serious, hop over to true crime. If you're not looking just to hang out and chit chat, go over to the nonsense chat. I think we named it nonsense.
I think it's literally is called nonsense. But two other quick things. We said it once, but actually three things. But to reiterate, we are going to be in Atlanta on December 3rd. We are doing a collaborative live event with multiple other podcasts. Charley from Crime Lines, Lainey, Bob Mata from Defense Diaries, Southern Gothic, Murder, She Told, our true crime podcast, a bunch of really amazing podcasts. And we're going to split them into like 45-ish minute panels and talk about cases and true crime in general. So we're really looking forward to that. On our social media, we have the link for it, but we'll try to grab it for the show notes as well. But we have posted it on social media if you want to get tickets. Second thing, the Patreon Live for this month is October 25th at 7 p.m. If you are not familiar, we post the link that day. If you are a Patreon member, it's usually 30-ish minutes before. And we do 30 minutes of a case and 30 minutes of hanging out, which brings us into the third thing is at the end of the month, I think it'll technically actually be on like November 1st. We do have an episode, even though I am gone. It may be a tad shorter than our normal episode because it is from September Patreon, but we were in this weird place where we didn't want to skip more time and we didn't want to keep any missing persons stories not available to the public because, again, it is about that exposure. So we decided to take the episode from that, not skip a week, but then also keep the hangout portion with our Patreon's sacred to Patreon. So that is what we will be doing. So just it may be a tad bit shorter than a normal episode. I think that's all.
Okay, live event, Atlanta, live event, Patreon. We're cool. Go to patreon.com.
We're cool.
I just wanted to throw it in there.
Yes, we have to advertise that.
Yeah, we're cool. Don't forget, rate and review if you happen to feel good about it. Go give us 5 stars. If you want to give us 1 star, just don't go.
We're revoking your access.
Yeah, just don't do it. But you know what? Until next time, you know what we say to Felicia.
Bye.
Bye.